Welcome students. Today we are going to start a new chapter from political science that deals with constitutional design. So in this chapter we'll talk about how the constitution of South Africa is made and also about the constitution of our country and the problem faced by the leaders and the peoples while making the constitution of our country and ultimately with constituent assembly. So let's get started. So, constitutional design. So, in this chapter, we are going to study about how the constitution of our country was made and who were there while framing the constitution of our country. So, before starting with that, first the question might come, what is the constitution actually? The constitution is the certain basic rules that the citizens and the government of that particular country have to follow, or this is this constitution has a written rules. These written rules are to be obeyed by the certain population or the government of that country. So before starting with how the constitution of our country was made, let us first go with the democratic constitution in South Africa. After a long struggle for freedom, South Africa became independent and got a democratic constitution. Nelson Mandela fought for its freedom and for rights and equality among black and white people. Along with seven other leaders, he was sentenced to life imprisonment in 1964 for daring to oppose the apartheid regime. So he spent the next 28 years in South Africa, most dreaded fearful prison in Robben Island. So after the long struggle for freedom, South Africa became an independent and got a democratic constitution. How? Because during 17th and 18th century, British used to rule South Africa, and there was the system named apartheid. There was the system called apartheid. So apartheid means the racial discrimination. So it is the discrimination made between white people, made by white people to the black people. So it was imposed by the white Europeans on the black Africans. Okay, so these are so during this time in South Africa, the black people were tortured by the white people, and they were discriminated in so many ways in their own country by the white people. Such discriminations are non-whites were forbidden from living in the white areas. So they were forbidden from living in the white areas. They could walk there only if they had a permit. Okay, and number two is there was there was the policy of segregation, means separate trains, toilet benches, etc., for the black people and the white people. So they were separate benches, toilets, trains for the white people and the black people. Okay, black and whites had separate churches also, so they had separate churches also, so they are discriminated in various sectors and various such other discrimination that were made by white peoples on black peoples are black peoples could not form association or protest against the terrible treatment. So they were not allowed to form association and to protest against the terrible treatment by the white people also. And those who protested were killed or sent to jail by the white people. The non-whites did not have voting right also. So during the time of election, the non-whites were not allowed to vote also. So they were tortured by the white people in so many ways. As these black people were tortured and discriminated in so many ways and in so many areas, so now they started revolting against the white people, and they formed their own African National Congress Party in the leadership of Nelson Mandela. Okay, so in this revolt, some white people also supported this protest, and this protest went for many years, and many people sacrificed their lives. With the result, the apartheid government came to an end, paving the way for formation of multiracial government. So at the end, this apartheid government came to an end, paving the way for the formation of multiracial government. Okay, after spending 28 years in jail, Nelson Mandela became a free person, and finally at the midnight of 26th April 1994, the new democratic state of Republic of South Africa emerged. So apartheid government came to an end, paving the way for the formation of multiracial government. So with their protest movement and with the with sacrificing the lives of so many people, ultimately they got the independent, and they have their own government now. So after that, the Africa became the democratic country, and they have their own constitution. But to make that constitution, people faced many problems. So these problems are these problems are the oppressor white people and the oppressed black people. Now they were planning to live together in the country, but what happened? The white people had no trust on black people. They used to think that these black people will take a revenge on white people, and the black people also they don't have trust on white people. Okay, so that was the first problem, and the second problem was black wanted the majority to rule and equality in the country. So the black wanted the majority to rule and equality in the country, but what the white people used to think, so the majority of the people in South Africa were the black people, so the white people they didn't want the majority to win the election. So that's why there was a fear of conflict between the black and white people again. Okay, number 3 was white people wanted to protect their privilege and property. So before, during the rule of white people, all the higher posts were taken away by the white people. Now they have to share all the higher posts with the black people, so that was not liked by the white people. Okay, so these are the problems that was there during the formation of the constitution of South Africa. But somehow at the end, what happened? The South African Constitution was made when the black and white people they united together and made the Constitution of South Africa. So now we came to know that how the South African Constitution was made. So let's move on to our country, and let us study about how the Constitution of our country was made. So making of the Indian Constitution. So every democratic country has a constitution, but every country with a constitution is not a democratic. What I mean by the sentence is that every democratic country has a constitution, okay? But all the countries which have constitution is not democratic country, okay? So the whole India Indian Constitution. So our Constitution, we should be proud of that, is that is our Constitution is one of the largest democratic constitution in the world. Okay, like South Africa, our country India also faced many problems while making the Constitution. So these problems are making constitution for the huge diverse countries like India was not an easy. So you know that our country is very diverse, so many peoples, so many religions, uh, okay, and so many types of people, so many types of religions are there in our for the country. So during that time, it had been very difficult for the leaders to make a constitution without harming or hurting the feeling of different people. So next, number two is the country was born through the partition. So our country was born. So during the time of independence, the partition was going on between India and Pakistan. So it was born through the partition, and so with that partition only, our country also got independent. So on the basis of religious difference and was a transmatic experience. So during that time, more than 10 lakh people died. Okay, so many people had sacrificed their lives while making the constitution. Number three is British has left it to the rulers whether they want to join India or Pakistan or remain independent. So during that time, what happened? There was a partition between India and Pakistan, and so British totally left it to the rulers whether, so there were so many princely state also during that time, and for the princely states, British left totally to the rulers whether to go with the Pakistan or to be in India. Okay, so that was also another problem. So number four problem was the constitution was providing people with equality, but in reality people were not equal. So the constitution was written to make the people live in equality, but in reality it was not. The people were not equals. So Hindu and Muslims were still fighting among themselves. Okay, fifth problem is the maker of the constitution feared that the people of India will not accept the constitution. But later on, what happened? But the Indian constitution now or today became one of the best constitution in the world. So next is discussion on important topics for the formation of Indian constitution. So the maker of Indian constitution already knew what type of constitution they wanted, and our freedom struggle was also based upon it. Okay, so this makers of our Indian constitution, they already had a thought in mind that we have to, by safeguarding the feeling of a different type of people living in India, we have to make the constitution. That's why they were already prepared in making the constitution. Number two is in 1928, Motilal Nehru and the eight other Congress leader had already drafted the Indian constitution. So in 1928 only, the Motilal Nehru and the eight other Congress leader had already drafted the Indian constitution with all the rights in it. So that also made easy later on while making the constitution. Okay, the experience gained by the Indians while working in the legislative institution under the British rule was also used while framing the constitution. So Indian leaders had some experience while working with the British in the legislative institution. Okay, so that also made very easy for the leaders while making the constitution, while framing the constitution. Number four is our constitution adopted many good laws from the colonial rule of the British Government of India Act 1935. So our constitution adopted many good laws from the colonial rule of the British government. So they also applied so many laws from while the country was under the British government. Or Okay, so number 5 was our constitution adopted good laws and policies from the constitution of other democratic country also. So our constitution also adopted good laws and policies from the constitution of other democratic countries. Okay,